Do not use forEach for asynchronous tasks. It is not friendly. With easy and practical examples, you will learn when and how to use forEach in JS. Let's get started! forEach is a way to iterate the elements of an array. In JavaScript, forEach can be applied to any type of array, so we can use an array of fruits. The forEach method executes a provided function as an argument, once for each element. In the first iteration, the function will be executed on the first element, in the second on the second, in the third on the third, and so on. It should be noted that the elements are traversed from the first to the last, from left to right. This function is a callback which has three arguments. The first one is the element. You can call it whatever you want, fruit, lm, item, whatever. It is the current element being processed in the array. The second argument is optional, which is the index of the element in the array. It starts from 0. And the last one is the optional array, which is a reference to the original array. It is the array for each was called. These are the three arguments of callback that can be written in three forms. Let's see this in code. Arrow function, a callback, or an inline callback. Do you eat enough fruits? I hope so, because we start with an array that contains a banana, 3 apples, a kiwi, and 2 watermelons. Because the callback is a function, it receives 3 arguments as I told you, and this callback must be a synchronous function, not an asynchronous one. I'll explain this shortly with some examples. Fruit equals 2 will have no effect on the element in the array, because the array is a copy of the original. If we use the reference of the array in combination with the index, we can modify the value from the position given by the index. We delete the example and move on to the next one, in which we want to count how many elements there are in the array. The count function works, which is also proven by strict equality between counter and fruits.length. Hit the subscribe button, the bell, and we continue with an example that simulates a kind of filtering function in which we keep only the distinct fruits. If we want to display only the distinct fruits, we can add an if statement and the banana, apple, kiwi, and watermelon are displayed. In this example, we check if there is at least one apple in the fruits array. The problem is that if we want it to be efficient and stop the repetitive statement as soon as an apple has been found, we cannot use the break as in the classic for. Let's see an example with a classic for. Only the first iteration was logged in the console. A much better option is to use sum instead of forEach. And with a single instruction we get the desired result. So far we have only seen the first argument of the forEach statement, which is the callback, but there is also a second one, which is this, a reference to an object. We build a counter object that has two properties. Count, that keeps track of the number of elements in the array, this is like the length property, and frequency, which is a map in which the keys are the types of fruit and the value is the number of times the fruit appears in the array. We define the add method that will update the counter object property values. If there is a key, we add 1. If not, we will have to initialize it with 0. We use a popular REST API that contains user posts and more. We test the endpoint in the Postman client and we pay attention to the order of the IDs. Posts are returned in ascending order of IDs. We return to the Visual Studio Code and use the fetch to recreate the request from the Postman. In this part, we will see why the callback should be synchronous and not asynchronous. We create the asynchronous fetch post function that will fetch the posts from the endpoint. Using an asynchronous callback, we notice that the order of the IDs is random, not in ascending order. This is because forEach is not waiting to get the values. A better option would be to use the map function together with promise.all, which will create an array of promises, and promise.all will wait for them, so we can get the post in the desired order. We can also use forEach to attach an event handler to each div with a card class, so when clicking, for example, an alert is displayed with the message clicked. And now a bonus. We use the fruit array from the beginning of this tutorial, but this time we add an initialized element. Notice that the callback does not apply to this element, so toString throws no exception. Instead, if the array contains undefined or null, an exception will be thrown. forEach is an interesting method, but it should be used with caution. It is also important to remember that the callback must be a synchronous function, not asynchronous. forEach returns undefined and does not change the original array, but callback can do that. I invite you to subscribe, like and share to learn programming fast. Activate notifications by clicking on the bell. Thanks for watching!